talk about them separately, because if you are to begin to advocate for the ecologies of those as things explicitly, they open up why some of these design moves that you're making, well, they open up opportunities within the design moves, because it's not just throwing it out there, but you begin to realize there's a world inside each world, and you're somehow combining them. And I think that's why, like, one of the reasons we're so interested in gravitating towards a nested circle condition, because maybe if we take some design shifts within there, like this overlap condition, it's like a Boolean where a portion of it exists in one world and another. And it also begins to tie back to the research phase, which one of our concerns is that somehow is getting dropped. And I think you tell a much longer, more richer story in relationship to that if you were to revisit it and use specific types of terminology.
So I think that's where we've adapted time to be transformation, and that really goes back to our initial investigations within the mining mine and the mining processes itself, is this idea of like transforming raw earth rock into something technology.
Yeah, but I also think there's another way to begin to argue for it, and it's not necessarily like domestication, but you have a very particular type of way in which you're modifying it, and it's doing certain things for you in relationship to the agenda. Because we can modify it by just dropping bombs on this thing and making a bunch of craters. But what you're talking about is like strategic redeployment. There's like an economy at play where this is a thing is seen as a live system. It's never going to be done. Like that's the argument that I would put forth. It's constantly evolving. What we're talking about here is a generational project. And argue that like if you construct that argument in such a way where the system itself has the intelligence to grow as our knowledge of these three core pillars that you've been interested in does as well. I think that you'll find that the jury will be a lot more generous because they can help begin to project this even further into the implications of some of these core ideas.
We're starting to try and break that down and identifying kind of quadrants of knowledge, or like different ways to term knowledge and how it's like changed.
So how do you distinguish data from information?
So we're saying that data is like just the raw data. In this case, it's like a biological sample, a DNA strain, or a series of points, and
it's like very first, very raw. It's like raw material, and the knowledge would be something that was
really built up over time and generations.
Right, it's being used. And the third one we have information. This third one, information I can read from it. And that information is something that was already processed after gathering. So we have data that is collected, information that is processed, and then knowledge that is being used.
So like the scholars have a body of knowledge that they're bringing to the archive, which is like the sorted data set. And they're using that knowledge to interpret it, to pull out information that's kind of like the headline. You know, our nearest habitable planet is Kepler 196b. But we figured that like little one-liner interpret basically. So they're all kind of types of knowledge, maybe. And then this idea that the information that we have can like go back into the system and begin to modify it. The more you understand like certain parameters about the way that nature works,
right.
the more you can like know where to look and like how to begin to parse things.
Right. So where knowledge is this this energy, or this that something that flows between our ecologies, our 3 programs, which is biology, astronomy, and geology,
I think you should
and
talk
as
about
well.
them as ecologies explicitly, right? I mean, you said ecologies, and then you were correcting yourself to say programs.
Okay.
And I think it's going to help in terms of the overall frame. And I really encourage you guys to go back and revisit this because we can think about program and overlapping programs in a very similar way to how we think about ecologies and overlapping ecologies. And looking at, in the point of mixing, is the ecotone, which it's separate and apart from the 2 things that it is comprised of. And ecotone. And this would have been a good. Kevin, can you? Is he just that sentence? Kevin, can you listen to this for a minute? Because I think that this is actually very related to what you and Anna were referring to as the hybrid or hybridized, which is the idea of the ecotone, where you get 2 overlapping ecosystems or ecologies. Those can be human ecologies, they can be political ecologies, they can be territorial, they can be plants and animals ecologies. But the point where the 2 are overlapped creates a third and distinct thing, which is separate and apart from the 2 things it's comprised of, and has unique characteristics and potentially kind of an idea of superspecies. So we can think about, it's very relevant too in terms of how Martin and Anastasia are working this idea. But I think you can, because obviously this is the only reason to combine these things is that there's some point at which where they mix something unique and somewhat unpredictable starts to occur. And I think you can, that diagram gets drawn out in a way that's like, even I would aspire to the level of a diagram that we see here. Once you have a spatial sense of where these things are occurring and what kind of space they're occupying. And I think, it doesn't have to be a kind of axonometric drawing like that. There's something clear about the idea of circles, but you figure out a way to show that information. Obviously, the circle here is pretty important, and it's coming up in way. And I don't know if it's intentional or not, but even the kind of way you terraform in here, where we're seeing this kind of reverse condition where one's cut and fill relationship, where you have this undulation of circles, the circle under your. Is that important? This sort of pad that you're.
Well, that's the platform we talk about. Like those things, they have to be mounted on some sort of a flat surface and secure into the ground. So, I mean, the array. Well, the array of that silicate garnet is, the metal is the tallest point, and then whatever is outside is the shorter, so we can span those lines and attach them to balloons. So it just like naturally creates some sort of a oval or circle, or some sort of tends to be a kind of a round balloon.
So, how do you guys answer the question, what is the significance of the circle to your theory?
Actually, there is not a lot of circles. Honestly, it's just the one circle that it's here.
Look at this drawing.
Well, those are more spirals, right? I mean,
There's only one spiral.
on
Two
that
spirals.
drawing, right?
Well,
Right.
we've been talking about this endless life cycle, right? So it's something that's like an infinite, and to generate that close.
There's a circulois virtuos deus, and it says that the circle is a vicious god. And it's a Nietzschean phrase about the idea of eternal recurrence. You can interpret it 2 ways. You can say the circle is a vicious god or the circle is a virtuous god. But either way, you're talking about. And the idea of eternal recurrence is just at any moment in your life, you should be able to embrace your entire life, and if you were to have to live it again, you would do it exactly the same. It's a no regret philosophy. I don't think that's important, but I think you guys need to have very clear, and I think tying it into life cycle is clear. But it will be a lot clearer when I think that this drawing is going to start to speak to that. I think that diagram starts to do a lot of work. And it should also be dealing with some kind of time component. I don't know how, I'd like to see more, you're talking about time, but we're not yet seeing drawings that are showing, and video obviously is one of the most clear ways of dealing with time and multiple senses of time that you guys have been dealing with pretty explicitly. I think that is going to be important. You don't want to be talking about time without being able to point to a drawing that's either going to show some kind of phase strategy for how this thing builds out, or something which is more abstract and is talking about the phasing in terms of how this archive starts to build up and what it begins to contain. And I don't know if phasing in terms of how you build this thing is important, whereas like with the project that Ali is doing, the phasing of what she's doing is exceedingly important. If it's not important to you, you can say this is something which we have X number of dollars and it's going to be built over a 6-month period. Leave it at that. I don't think it's necessarily critical to how you think about it, but I don't know. I'm disturbed by those circles under these things, and I'm not entirely sure why. I don't know if you have the same reaction to it, or I don't want to see them. No, the circles, these pads are like helipads.
Oh yeah, I have choice.
Get rid of them. Yeah. Because you want to see, like, I imagine these things are going to, they're staked into the ground the way most thematic things would be. Even a very large, expensive marquee tent is, you know, there's a stake, there's a large stake that goes into the ground to hold that thing in place. I mean, of course, you could install, you know, apparatus. You're not building it. You don't have to worry about that. So I think that's actually having direct contact with the ground somehow is quite important to your ideas.
Yeah, and even though it's highly abstracted here in this gray visualization,
in the middle left-hand side of the board, like that's beginning to suggest that these are growing out of the earth, and so going to reach towards because we don't get that perimeter end condition. So, I mean, even if that circle has to exist for anchoring, I still would bury it.
Right.
So
Yeah.
we'd only see dirt.
And then you'd see the section, which would be cool. Carriage, like metal that's attaching into.
but I would advocate that phasing is, though, let's not say it is important, but I think is important is understanding the difference, and by having it phased, it is never done. It's a work that's just perpetually under construction. It's like WALL-E, where the rules of the system are just left to play, and there's a series of small constraints. WALL-E was only able to make things into cubes and in turn stack them. But you have your own set of rules, and if you go in the other direction to say we have $10 billion, this is a finished product, I think more pressure is applied to you, or a higher degree of responsibility falls upon you to deliver this at a high resolution. And I think that with the time that's given, it may be better to start thinking about how this grows and builds up over time. And, we can look at that in multiple different ways. You can understand that each of these are characters within the field, and they're built independently of one another. Or the phasing actually occurs in section. It's almost as if, I don't know. It's if you go back to the late '90s, and if you've seen this project where this inmate that was on death row donated his body to science, and they froze it, and they basically put it on a meat slicer, and they scanned each of the layers, and then you get these beautiful animated sections of the body. I almost see the same type of drawing, maybe even being produced in the abstract in a portion of the video, where we look at this cross-section through the earth, and it would start potentially hundreds of feet down below, and you're beginning to reveal some of the arguments about, this goes back into your pocket model, where we start to see isolated deposits of value inside this larger system. But then eventually it would migrate up above a datum and then get to the height of a building where, I mean, I would actually be cutting sections through all of it, including the balloon, until I was above all of it. And it just could be like a really interesting way to, like, one, take a glimpse of the project, but also if that as a move is choreographed in such a way where you can pull out and start to understand that these are actually occurring at different ebbs and flows. I would imagine what the generating, like that's for me, one of the questions would be like, what's the generating impulse to do anything in this thing? Why? And it may be tied into biology, astrology, what was the third one?
Geology.
Geology. I'm always going to have to. But you can see like how the form would build out in such a way if astronomy was generating force, or how it would build out in such a way if geology was the force. And like those two may be polar opposite vectors of one another, where one is attempting to excavate the Earth, and the other one is trying to bring us closer to the heavens, like physically, like the body moving up in space. And so you may be able to find ways to couple some of these together so that they're in turn dependent. And I think that would begin to support the larger argument this is one massive system. They're not operating independently of one another. I think that's going to be one of the biggest challenges within here. What do you think, Kevin? What do you like about it, or what do you think is really weird? Or some of the ideas?
Just to clarify how like the three terms like, show themselves in like these things. I don't know what how do they affect that? I'm not sure.
Like, how do you talk about frontier through any of these drawings?
Yeah,
that you
yeah, like
have?
how the terms influence. What affects what, or like how do people react with those three terms? Because I see people in like that the one you referred to, but I don't understand how they're reacting with the structure or what's happening.
So those long path mounts, they throughout the throughout the entire site. It's a journey. It's exploration on the surface of the site. We move through those mounds. There are two types of mounds. One of them is built on the ground. The second one is just wrapping around it. And the silicated garden are pointers that point you throughout it and guide some sort of throughout from the entrance to the exit, or from the exit to the entrance, whichever the way we start looking at it.
And the idea with these is that there is like a fabric structure, so the beams could raise and fall.
Right.
They're flex, they're not stagnant.
So there's a some of those are fixed, and the other ones are ones with a little hot air balloons attached to like a little box or something, like a basket, right? So people come and get in, and you can drive up to the all together with the silicated garden and explore the site from above. And again, it's
But they can go in the actual tree, the silicate tree,
yes,
right?
they can be here, and let's say there could
That
be
balloon can accommodate people at the top, is that right?
right. Well, that doesn't show, but actually on those drawings, but
I think you guys need to see those drawings, and the drawing I think you also need to do is when this thing is collapsed and laying on the ground, and literally showing somebody, because spatially there's something really interesting about this thing that can collapse to almost nothing, and then given a few other parameters, start to create a sublime relationship between the ground plane and the sky. This is what this is the objective of structural design, right? Is to deal with this idea of big sky, right? And to mediate that big sky relationship with really strong.
and the last way of exploring site as a frontier is underground, those tunnels. with that, you were basically, fully underground, moving through all different kinds of deposits, all kinds of different rocks.
I think the frontier is also like that one image where you can see the horizon out of the pit from the initial part. And I think it's this idea of this great beyond, what's beyond like this visible known edge. Trying to start to figure out what it's like to visit the archive underground, considering it's probably also data. Trying to get the roughness of the natural stone and then being able to see into this giant server housing.
This is like an orifice kind of window thing.
Yeah.
It's almost like it's like one of these fake cutouts that you would see in these little science books, right? Where it's not actually a window. It's just like they're eroding away part of the wall.
The facility's underground, right?
Yes.
Where in the map in relationship to the path is?
Yeah. That needs to show up. I don't know. It's probably patchy.
What do you guys think of this drawing? This is the new version of it.
It shouldn't have that block thing.
And the key is what's down here, right?
Why does it have different colored gray quadrants?
I don't know. That's a print thing. It was all one black.
Just
So something to figure
a
out.
note, if you're trying to print black, it's not actually taking your color tool and jamming everything down to 0.
No, it's
There's
the rich
if you do a
black.
search, there's a certain value you have to set, and that guarantees that you'll get the deepest color that the majority of our plotters can come up with.
Yeah, 'cause I think that's what the 0 black. That's the one.
And where it's a circle and this on these two sides, is that a mistake? The way your patterns know, go farther on to the right, farther to the right, more, yeah. How that arc and on the bottom.
This just needs to be filled in. I thought it was part of it. I mean, I guess it could be since everything is.
Well, you kind of have this ragged edge on the left.
Yeah.
Then, I don't know, maybe it's more consistent at least with the idea that this is continuing. I see that and I'm telling you that it's obviously it keeps continuing. And that's where a sort of artificial thing that you're posing just in order to, it's a mapping, right? And this is the other thing that I think you guys really embrace the mapping component of the research seminar, and I think just give yourself 10 minutes to syllabus in terms of mapping, some accumulation of information, and then this idea of sedimentation of information, right? Because that's effectively what you're trying to get at here in this diagram. That the more and more I think about it, it's going to be so important for how you guys tell the story. And you have to be really careful not to, because you don't want to. It should feel that everything here is quite essential to your idea, and not this kind of pastiche landscape that you did. And I think that how you pull it all together with this kind of drawing, but really thinking about through the idea of mapping, of ecology, and mapping of ecologies. This is one form of ecology map, right? And it's with the geology and what those existing layers of sedimentation are. And you could start to, I think there's more information that can go on here in the sense of like, what are your data layers look like on this kind of map? Do they exist in there? Is that how you start to show where this data center is? Does it get its own? Does it just have zeros and ones? And that's like the way you start to think about the kind of accreted layers of data in terms of the layers that you're drawing out. You've got your circulation in here, geology, so the circulation is another form. And you only have 2 moments where you start to, well, I guess technically 4 moments and potentially more, where you have the spiral, where it starts to turn in on itself and conclude, right? The infinity, you know, the spiral has, it begins to turn in on itself, you know, so you get devolution. The circle, of course, never does this. And your circles also don't really bully at each other, right? They touch each other tangentially. And I know that this has come up previously, and I don't know that you guys have incorporated that into how what is the difference in terms of these ecologies you're mapping onto the site. Just to me, that tangential relationship versus the one that really starts to unravel in the spiral, those are different. And I think there should be a pretty clear way of talking about it. And if there isn't an important difference in terms of what's happening in those moments, then it should shift.
I think like what isn't moving to the forefront. I think this idea of sedimentation is super critical.
Yeah. We use the sedimentation of the mind again too, especially for you guys.
Oh, we have it, right? Isn't it right there?
But I think that, you know, one in relation to data, but it forces you into the cross section. And like for me, what was amazing is like within the past 10 years, at least from paying attention to it and moving to the forefront of more of accessible set of news, but the idea of the extraction from the Arctic, and they pull these cores, and they can tell a story about the weather patterns that existed around the globe, just from that cross section. I think that they to tap into that aspect where our Earth is one of the oldest memory systems. But its memory is recording something completely different, and you're layering on top of it and celebrating what that means. And you talk about it briefly when you deal with this transportation network and what that is doing for you in the project. But I think that should move to the forefront as like one of your biggest core ideas. And I think that it would shift the way we begin to read, understand, and interpret this project. So, I don't know, that gets me excited. Thinking about that as a
Can you articulate that? Just so I followed you, but it's
the sedimentation of the data.
Right.
You were talking
And
about.
frankly, your glitch diagram could come into play with that, you know, as an idea, right? Because if you're talking about the rock type here, which is our analogy here for segmentation, they've all been metamorphosed with the exception of the tailings themselves. And effectively, you guys are coming in, and metamorphosis, the process of metamorphosis actually is a state change. It is a new entity that is caused by a series of pressures. In this case, it's a combination of depth and pressure and temperature. So you guys are bringing in a whole series of pressures, right? And the glitch diagram actually is a way of thinking about, you know, perhaps a, you know, kind of metamorphosis of data, right? Where there's some other kind of pressure that's operating on the data stack. In terms of rack systems and the stack. What do you have in your stack? That's how tech guys ask each other what their server farm is like. You know? So it's all the language is very much part of conception of technology.
But I'm thinking of some of the there's data, and data needs to be stored, and there's different ways in which data is stored. And I'm thinking of some of the people that work like directly on film and tape audio, where they're not looking at actually producing an aperture and exposing it to light, but they're drawing and manipulating it at the material level itself and like really playing with that as a medium. And so to a certain degree, I would look at the Earth in much the same way in this gesture that you're producing with the reconfiguration of the land. It's just it's a different medium, and it's a different set of data storage, and it's not that it's better or worse than the existing system within there, but you're challenging the way in which we begin to think about storage of information, and that those trailings are storages of information. They're telling us stories right before you came to the site about a certain economy of mining, but now I think it's doing something that's much more about an experience. And I think that data is king, and it ties back to your original set of investigations with the different types of data farm and Bitcoin and so on and so forth. It's just like all of those arguments need to shift and like be advocated for or argued through the site, and not it's less about technical descriptions of the things that you currently have, but beginning to open up larger narratives that are tied into it. Like I'm thinking of the balloon issue, and like on one side I would want the balloon to have a direct tie, like the idea of heating up air occurs during the day, and in the evening it falls back down to the earth. But you can also play the game out where there is what would be a synthetic heat that would be deposited in there, so you would have control. I would expect that, like, I want to go here at night.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's when this thing like really shines, no pun intended. And we need to see that within the visualization at multiple scales. And so it wouldn't only be the single individual piece, but this forest condition of these interventions, and how one begins to engage with them, and whether they're luminescing themselves within those membranes, or if they're bottom lit, or it's a combination of a handful of things. Like really get in there. I mean, that's like one of those moments where you can really push the project forward in a completely different way, because we've been always looking at it in either an abstract sense or this daylight condition. But I would be highly conscious of like sunrise and sunset. Like that's where I would be going if it's like the day. So now we start to get these skies that are like completely surreal.
So this, to me, like you said, it's a fabric, and it's more solid. It's more static than it is.
I think we need to show all the stages.
Not just that, like the way you rendered it. Like I don't know if that's intentional, like you chose this color as a type of material, or if it's just decorative.
We want to get, much like Richard's already pointed out that drawing, a much deeper sense of engagement with these things in terms of the ground plane and people and animals. I mean, what kind of animals are there in this location? There's probably snakes, tortoise, large lizards, large turtles.
Turtles in the desert?
I don't know.
Yeah, there's
Desert turtles?
there's a great tortoise. It's like an endangered tortoise in the Rojas.
They've been around for so much longer than humans. I mean, they're just so much more adaptable.
Maybe he has a very reflective shell. I don't know.
He's got solar panels on his back.
He's really adaptable.
Yeah. What do we think about drawing the dimension here versus like these two? When they come together a little bit more? I know you guys are playing through a bunch of the line drawings with the Tiffany sky. I'll call that Tiffany blue. It's good, it's a really nice tone, so it makes me want to see it throughout.
Well, we try to render these to see, if we can some sort of move towards more realistic representation than the line drawing. And they were pretty quick, that like we pointed out that fabric needs to be light, really light, so we can see through
If
it.
you could show some translation.
Right, so like here it was actually meant to be metallic. Is that the one? we probably would even see better on the photo paper, but it was supposed to be metallic, so there is reflection up. So we were trying to think maybe it would be like made out of steel or something, you know.
Does this
there's
have
a
to be
sculpture.
blue, your mesh? I mean, we like
No,
that.
actually, it's not gonna be blue. It's more like we try to different fabrics and with patterns and maybe more something like kind of brownish, something a little bit darker color that will actually go with.
That's showing the structure, right? We're to think of that as like a Gabion type
Right here.
basket texture.
Yes, that
Can
would
it
be.
just be black and white there? You know, I don't know. Like, too much color. The thing is to show the color of those trees. You know, you're showing context with the clay kind of earth color, which is that's a lot of content, that clay earth color. Maybe just get it. I would be in favor of getting that, you know, your Tiffany blue sky and turning these because they're not going to be colored in the landscape, so it's almost drawing is misleading because these guys are colored in the landscape. So to see this thing blue, I would make it as simple as possible. And I do want to see a section, this thing that Richard's talking about, the body section. That would be incredibly powerful because everything that you're doing here has this kind of story, and because you know this information, geology, that's stuff that you can show in your section. I think the idea of sinking this thing and then showing the tethering system, and even showing that a little bit on the ground. I mean, just that they'll start to feel more like fabric if we can see it tether and we see something attached to it. So whether that happens into under the so-called ground plane lines or at the surface, I don't really care either way. But I think it starts to change how we think about, because like these they look like they're tethered underneath the ground. I think because ultimately that fabric is coming to a point, and I think it might be better if we see that, we'll understand them more as kind of tensile structure. And the kind of marionette strings are not coming through enough in these. Can't see them at all. And I think that might also have to do with why they look stiff, right? Because we can't really see what they're pulled from. I feel this drawing might be effective if it included more. Basically, it's not a foreground, middle ground, background. It's basically foreground, thing, and middle ground. We're not really sure. But I think if that was, let's say, I mean, I don't know if the vision is that that's your, at a moment in the tunnel, and it's not an actual window, it's actually, you know, artist privilege, blasting a hole through the wall to show the proximity, or it isn't actually. Now somehow to me feels like an actual window. Not that it could be. I mean, the idea of this strange, like, organic hole is really interesting. But, like, can you point to where that is on your plan?
You see it as being like along the loop,
Along the passage, you're able to see it.
and for this plan as well, I think you should like embed where everything is. Kind of. I just came into the room. I wanted to know what that was.
Yeah. Yeah, we need more information. The plan of the facility, obviously. So in terms of this type of render, we have more information where we can sense a subject that's in a tunnel. So we're seeing this maybe to the left side, and we're seeing the extent of a tunnel to the right. There's some idea of being in one space and having, because actually this is a tangent moment, right? Where we're not overlapping. Maybe, you know, technically circles are overlapping slightly because they have a thickness, but if they were wrong, and we just think about the pure geometry of a circle, if those lines are touching, they're not overlapping in their area. And I think that that's what you're going for. I do think you guys need to speak much more specifically about that, how you're thinking about the plan. But this is a tangent moment, so you could show us the important tangent moment, right? Is there another equally important moment that could happen where the circle, like this one down here, there's 3 small circles, and then there's like a medium-sized one that this is about, right? Yeah, because then
I would say
those drawings will start to get
somewhere
darker
like-
for the tunnel.
This is one of our longest underground passage, and then you're like coming out around the hill and then like down the CSI. That area.
Okay, we need to wrap up, guys.
How big is CERN? Is a circle diameter, you know?
So,
It crosses from Switzerland to France. You guys probably, I gave you that project. Probably with the.
Just out of curiosity, I would look at the size and scale of CERN, and look at it in relationship to the size and scale of your site. I think even as like a super simple 6-inch diagram, like to begin to say, is this something that exists? This gives you an understanding of the scale. You can do this. Okay. So, like,
Yeah,
some
like
point
those
of
comparative
reference.
scale diagrams that you made with the Landau project.
Mm-hmm.
Your CERN. So the length of the collider is, hold on, folks, Large Hadron Collider.
20 feet.
Largest and most powerful. I actually know this. There's a small one that's retired.
I have one in my apartment. It's tiny.
You're awesome.
Keep it in the fridge.
27 kilometers. And they call it the LHC, Large Hadron Collider. So the small one was retired. I got to go in there, and it's so crazy. I mean, it's like you're in this weird. They store stuff in there. So it's an amazing science site. It's just got generic boxes.
Okay.
27 kilometers.
So we need to